here at Gilman today for our worship. And if you're a visitor, we're especially happy to have you here. On the back of your bulletin, you'll see a little information section. So if you'd like to fill that out, and just put it in that little box in the back on the table. Our praise team is going to come and sing a song called One Day. And it really speaks to our world, and everything that's been going on.
One day there'll be no more waiting left for our souls. One day there'll be no more children longing for home. One day when the kingdom comes right here where we stand, we will see the promised land. Ooh.
One day there'll be no more lives taken too soon. One day there'll be no more need for a hospital room. One day every tear that falls will be wiped by His hand. We will see the promised land. Ooh, hallelujah. There will be healing from this heartbreak we've been feeling. We'll sing in the darkest night, 'cause we know that the light will come. There will be healing. Hallelujah.
One day there'll be no more anger left in our eyes.
One day the color of our skin won't cause a divide. One day we'll be families standing hand in hand. We will see the promised land. We will see the promised land. Hallelujah. There will be healing from this heartbreak we've been feeling. We'll sing in the darkest night, 'cause we know that the light will come.
so I so appreciate the Martins who have worked to get this set up and get it ready for today. And the platform doesn't make near as much noise as this one. So we may keep it once we try things out because the pool has a small leak in it. So nobody went, woo! All right. As we start, got a question for you. What are you looking forward to regarding going to heaven? What's something you're looking forward to about heaven? You know, and so think about that and share that with somebody beside you. Share an answer. What are you looking forward to about heaven? Don't worry, this is nice and solid. I don't know about any of y'all, but I'm looking forward to watching old movies. That is one of the things that I'm hoping to get to do. Now, the reason I say that, because you know, first of all, my most important thing is to see Jesus. To see my Savior and bow down before Him. Then there's family there and those things. But you know, we're going to be there, as Amazing Grace says, 10,000 years, and we've just begun. 10,000 years. I'm not very good at math anymore, but I think that's 3,650,000 days. It's a few days. And that as I look at my life, I'm 62. 62 is like rolling over in bed when you get to heaven. It's, you know, that's a little blip, and yet we're going to have so much time. And I think, you know, the Bible talks about God being timeless, and I think there's going to be a way for us to be able to see back at those key events that took place in the Bible. You know, I want to see Moses on the backside of nowhere, on the backside of a mountain in the middle of nowhere, and the bush on fire, but not being consumed. And today's message is going to be about some of those things that I want to see when we get there. As I've been talking to you, I want to give you another truth. The first book of Samuel is so important that I hope that you will do more than just look at the stories, that you will realize it is a book. And with that, a book is telling one key story. All these characters, all these events are trying to communicate a very big truth. And it begins with Hannah. When Hannah cries out, and she can't even cry out with words how deep her grief is, and yet God hears that grief. He hears that cry. And one of the key passages is right there when Samuel was a young man. And Samuel, a young boy, and he says, "Speak, Lord." Do you know the rest? "Speak, Lord." I can't hear you. You guys. "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." That's a central truth that will go through the rest of the book. Are you listening to God? And we're going to meet two main characters, Saul, who has everything done for him. God tries to guide his path, but he never seems to listen to God. And then today we're going to meet a young boy. We're going to jump away from Saul for a little bit and look at a little boy because it ties into our baptism. And a little boy who is only a young teenager at this point that we meet him, and yet he already knows how to listen to God. And so children, all you way back there in the back, this message is for you. Because so many of these folks up front, they don't have as long as you do. And how important it is to learn how to walk with God early on in life. And we're going to see a little secret that helps David to be able to later on to face the giants that will come. And he faced more than one giant. And you see, the truth is that you and I, the older we get, we face giants constantly. We have giants in our life. Those issues that overwhelm us. Those issues that block out everything. Those issues that we don't think we can see any way to get around them. And we need to learn how to see beyond the giants. And so as we begin looking at David, I want you to remember what we've read about Saul. And I hope that you will go back, and we're going to be in chapter 13 today. Is where we're going to be. And I hope later on that you'll go back and read those other ones and keep going through to see the story of the whole book. There's a truth that's being communicated. And as we're getting ready to go through that, one of the key truths that we're seeing is that Saul had all the outward appearance of a leader, but none of the inner character to be a spiritual leader. That Saul had all the outward appearance of a leader, but none of the inner character needed to be a spiritual leader. You see, that character can only be developed through time alone with God. Seeking God. And doing it like that young boy Samuel. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. That's a wonderful phrase to begin every day and to end every day with. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. And so at the conclusion of our service today will be our baptism, and this whole service, this whole message is pointing to that truth there and helping us to understand what we need in our life as well and what the waters represent. And so to Jesse and Matthew, I see Jesse, I can't find Matthew. Oh, there he is, there he is. Yeah, that's what happens when you get old. We get little spot vision. You know, I can see 3 rows. And then after that, you just kind of become heads with hair. Or no hair. But to Jesse and Matthew, I want you to know that this day is very important and that you have chosen to follow Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. But this is not the end of that journey. It is the beginning. And what you do after this day forward is just as important as what led to this point. And I hope the rest of us will remember as well. As I said, that what you do after this point will help you be able to face the giants that will come in your life. And it reminds me of when I talked about love. Remember what I said that my favorite definition of love is? It is, that's right, Brunswick stew. And the key truth there is that it's a recipe, not a buffet. It is a recipe. And when we learn to follow God's recipe, we'll have success. But too many people treat God like a buffet. Well, God, I want this, and I want that, and I'll pick this and that. But we need to follow the recipe. And so with that said, I want you to turn to 1 Samuel chapter 16. And I think I said 13 earlier, didn't I? I did. But it is 16 that we're in. That's why I write these things down, because my mouth no longer matches my brain too often. And so 16, we're going to be starting at verse 5. This is a point where we're jumping ahead and seeing that God has already dismissed Saul. Saul has messed up, and we'll look back at that in a week to come. But right now, God has said, Saul, it's time to move on to Samuel. And he says, I want to show you the person that I've chosen to be my leader. And so they go to meet Jesse, and I'll start at verse 5. And it says, in peace, Samuel said, he has come in peace, he replied, and I've come to sacrifice to the Lord. To consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. Then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they arrived, Samuel said to saw Eliab, the oldest of Jesse's sons, and said, certainly the Lord's anointed one is here before me. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or his stature, because I have rejected him. Humans do not see what the Lord sees, for humans see what is visible, but the Lord sees the heart. The Lord sees the heart. I hope you have that verse underlined in your Bible. How important it is to know that we need to see ourselves the way that God sees us. And too often we look at the strengths of our characters and others, but yet that's not what is needed. I'm going to keep reading on in that passage as well. 1 Samuel 16, going on to verse 8. It says, Jesse called Abinadab and presented him to Samuel. The Lord hasn't chosen this one either, Samuel said. Then Jesse presented his other son, Shammah. But Samuel said, the Lord hasn't chosen this one either. And Jesse had all the 7 sons to go by. And Samuel told Jesse, the Lord has not chosen any of these. And I'm sure Samuel must have been very discouraged at that point. And Samuel said, aren't these all the sons you have? And there is still the youngest, he answered, but right now he's tending the sheep. And Samuel told Jesse, send for him. We won't sit down to eat until he gets here. And we know that David was the one that God had chosen. And the question is, why David? Why did he pick David? And the answer should be obvious because we read it so often throughout Scripture. It says that David had a heart after God. A heart that seeks out God and enjoys being in God's presence. And if you look to Acts 13, verse 22, in the New Testament, we'll see it. It should be on the screen. Acts 13, verse 22. And when he had removed him, the he is God, God raised up for them David as king, to whom also he gave testimony. God gave testimony to David. Can you imagine that? What sort of testimony would God give about me to someone else? But God says this about David. I have found David, the son of Jesse, a man after my own heart, and who will do all of my will. And he will do all of my will. You see, we don't get to see actually all of what David did in the wilderness while he was tending sheep, but we get a glimpse into what impacted him, and that he followed after God on his own. Later on, when David goes to face Goliath before that, he gives this credit to God. He says that God was with me when I faced lions and bears. Not just one lion, it will be multiple times. He says God was with me and gave me the victory, and it will be no different when he takes on Goliath. But it wasn't just in danger that that David learned how to seek God. It wasn't just in the times of danger that David learned how to seek God. It was in those quiet times, those boring times, when nothing seemed to be going on while he was out there tending sheep. You see, because here is the truth that I want to get through to you. To see God in the dangerous moments, we first must learn to see him in the quiet moments. If you want to be like David, you've got to learn to see God in the quiet moments. In contrast, we look at Saul, and we've been watching him, that God does so much for him, and yet Saul is 30 years old, and he doesn't even know who the man of God was, Samuel. We never read about Saul actively seeking God. We never read any good thing, any good quote that Saul makes. But yet David has filled us with many, many quotes that we look to. In fact, David wrote almost half of all the Psalms, 73. Now, there are only 150 chapters, but yet 73 of them were written by David. And they read more like his private journal. They read more like of his time that he wrote down when he's seeking after God. And see, many of these were written later on in his life when we look at them, but yet I think they point to when he had those quiet times out in the wilderness watching sheep. You see, because when you watch sheep, it wasn't like you can sit back and just watch TV. You know, you can't really pay attention, you fall asleep, do what you want, get up, go, come back, and the story's not going anywhere. Sheep have to be watched day and night. Sheep get in trouble, and you've got to stay with them constantly. And it was out in those times that David sought after God. And we don't get a glimpse into his private time, but we can hear some of the things that he wrote. And so I'm going to point to some of the Psalms. Look at Psalm chapter 5, verse 1 through 3. We read these. Give ear to my words, O Lord. Consider my meditation. Give heed to the voice of my cry, my King and my God. For to you I will pray. My voice you shall hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning I will direct it to you, and I will look up. In the morning you'll hear my voice, and I will look up. David talks about wanting to seek after God, and to seek him each morning. So children, you and young and adults, if you want to be successful, seek God in the morning. Seek God in the morning. And then in Psalms 19, verses 1 through 3, we read these other words. Listen to this. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor language where their voice is not heard. He looks at the sky and he sees God. He's out there and he gives credit to God. So once again, children and youth, and even adults, if you want to be successful, give God praise. Give him the praise that he is worthy of. Make it a habit to honor God, to acknowledge him in all that you see. As we see this world, consider how blessed you are. To moms, you know what it's like to be overlooked. You know what it's like to cook a meal and have the kids come running in, sit down, and go, ugh, this again? You know, and just go, well, just eat it and run. And yet not even notice how much work you took to build that. As we look at this world, and we realize that God created this world and made it beautiful so that you and I can enjoy that beauty. Let's give him the praise that he is worthy of. Let's honor him. And of course, as we look at David and his life, we can't miss Psalm 23. In Psalm 23, he says right away, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. How crucial this is that it become a testimony, not just of David, but of you and I. That we say, the Lord is my shepherd. He guides me. And so children, youth, and adults, if you want to be successful, let God guide your life. Too often we say, well, these are my plans. This is what I plan to do. But when we say, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. Guide me today. Guide my steps. You see, though we can't really see David, what he took place there at those times that made him have a heart after God so that God would say that, we see the results of what took place. We see the impact later on that began when he was a little boy. And we'll see that David guided through tough situations because he sought out God early in life, before the storms come. He sought out God before the storms come. And Saul outwardly looked like he had everything needed to be a great leader. But he was missing the most important thing, the inner character to lead. An inner character that says, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. As I said, we can't see into David's life. And reminds me of this cup. It's been up here for a reason. I hope that I picked it up enough times, took a sip out of it, for many of you to say, wonder what's in the cup. Wonder what's in the cup. Has anybody thought, wonder what he's drinking up here? Oh my goodness, I gotta get y'all to pay more attention. So I was hoping you would go, wonder what's in the cup. So wonder what's in the cup. You know, it looks like, what type of mug does this look like? A coffee mug. And so you can say, oh, I know it's coffee because I know Glenn, and he loves coffee. I need coffee every morning, not just one cup, big cup, and I refill this. And I need a lot of coffee. So you say, oh, I know it's coffee. But what do you really know? You just know it's coffee. You don't know what kind of coffee I like. And I like a special type of coffee. And you don't know if I like it black or with stuff in it. And so if I put stuff in it, what stuff do I put? Do I put just cream? What kind of cream? How much cream? Do I put just cream in my cup? You see, the more we look and realize how little we actually know what's inside my cup. And the same way it is with God. We think we know one another, but when I look at you, all I see is the outer shell. All I see is your cup. But God can see the insides, and He knows who you are. He knows your innermost being. He knows exactly what I like. When we were looking earlier at Saul, when they were trying to ordain him as king, they said, well, where is he? And God said, he's over behind the baggage hiding. You see, God always sees you. And David wrote about this in Psalms 139. And children, there's going to be a very special verse in here for some of you who are young. And some of you folks, if you get older, you may need this verse as well. And it won't be in this verse section, but the verse 1 through 4 of Psalms 139, I want to turn to this one. It says, Lord, you have searched me, and you've known me. You know when I sit down and when I stand up. You understand my thoughts from far away. You observe my travels and my rest. You are aware of all of my ways. God knows you. He knows what's inside your cup. And children, listen to these words. David says, if I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light around me will be night. But the truth is that even the darkness is not dark to you, God. Isn't that a wonderful truth? You know how dark things get in the dark? And yet it's not dark to God. It says, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night shines like the day. Darkness and light are alike to you, God. It says it doesn't make a difference if it's night or day to you. That God knows us. And I want to remind you that David did not gain this knowledge on the battlefront, but alone in the wilderness in private times with God. And those private times with God. And see, here is the key truth that we've got to grasp. That our private walk with God is more important than our public walk. But a healthy private walk impacts our public walk. Our private walk with God is more important than our public walk. But a healthy private walk impacts our public walk. Everyone knew David had a heart after God. It's a testimony that carried on and on and on. And he got it by seeking God privately. It had an impact in his life. So once again, children, youth, and even adults, if you want to make something of your life, seek after God on your own time. Seek after God on your own time. Not just coming to church. You may go, oh my goodness, would I say that? You know, I need you here. But this is important, but you need to seek God even on your own. In Psalms 27, verse 4, it says, one thing I have desired of the Lord, that I will seek, and that will I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire of his temple. It reminds me of when I was going to college. You know, I made it through high school doing the typical plan that so many folks get. You know what? I want to do the least amount of work possible to make it through. And I could pay attention in class and make B's without doing much homework. And I thought that approach would work in college. And I get there and one professor says, now you need to understand that college is built around this principle. For every hour you take in class, you need to spend 2 hours outside of class studying to make C's. For every hour in class, you've got to spend 2 outside of class just to make C's. I tried to beat that rule. Boy, did my son try to beat that rule. We learned you can't beat the rule. You've got to put in the private time alone. And how important that is for God as well. How important it is that we seek God our own time and realize that our meaning, our purpose must come from Him. You see, some people search for meaning in their career. You know, they say, oh, I'm going to become a dentist. You know, I've never figured out why anybody would have come and be a dentist and stick their hand down someone's mouth. But some folks do want to be a dentist, and that gives them meaning, and that's okay. You know, but when we choose to have our doing become our identity rather than being, it's going to lead us astray. We're going to wind up in trouble because we won't see who we really are. Now, there's others who make their identity based on what they have. What I have is what matters. What I have is gives me my identity. And no matter what you try to buy, it will never be enough. See, those things are not bad or wrong, but our purpose needs to come from our Creator. And so today, as I'm going to be baptizing 2 young followers of Jesus Christ, I want you to know that usually we talk about this being a place where we symbolize dying to self and rising again as a new believer in Jesus. And we use this water because we can't survive underwater to represent the grave. But having it here in this different setting has reminded me of another imagery of the water. It's in a feed trough. Reminds me how important that water is to our lives. Do you know, I love riding a bicycle. I haven't done it much up here, but I really want to do it. I got to ride yesterday. When I ride a bicycle, there's a couple of things I will not do without riding. If I'm going to do more than just make laps around the church, there's 3 things I'm going to do. I'm always going to have a helmet on. And because I've learned, it saved my life one time when I went over the handlebars and landed right on my head before I even knew it. That helmet saved my life. Number 2, I'm going to have my bike computer. Because if I'm going to ride, I want to get track of those miles, right? You folks who have those Fitbits on your arms, you go, man, all those steps I took and I forgot to put my Fitbit on. I want to have my computer to keep track of the miles I've ridden the bike. And I'm proud of the miles that I've ridden the bike. Number 3, I will never get on a bike and ride without a water bottle. I will never do it because of how essential water is to being able to ride. I've learned what it's like to run out of fluids on a ride and how easily you can do that. I've gone on rides and I've weighed myself beforehand, and during the ride I have consumed 4 bottles of water that are 22 ounces each, and I come home and I would weigh, one time I weighed 7 pounds less than I did when I started. And that's not healthy weight. It's just how much water we sweat out and how essential water is to our lives. We must have water. And so I find it amazing that the agent we use to symbolize our relationship to Jesus Christ, water, is also the substance that we need to survive. We cannot survive without water. And I think God, in His infinite wisdom, says, I'm going to give you a symbol to show you that your life is based on dying to self and living to me and depending upon me. You see, I didn't answer that question earlier, did I? When I asked, what's in my cup? Nothing. And it's not because I drank it all. I can't tell you how thirsty it actually made me. Every time I took a sip and there was nothing there. You see, so often some of us have gone where we've, well, I better not do that, because they're going to do that. But where we've had a taste of water once, and we don't go back. We don't go back. Oh, how we need that living water. Just like when I run. Because I'm going to run out. And I need that living presence of Jesus Christ in my life. I want to tell you about a song. It's a type of music that's not my favorite. I think it was a Southern gospel song. I heard it in 1976. Heard it a couple of times beforehand. But especially on one day, on June 11, 1976, actually June 13, when I gave my life to Christ. The song is, "Fill my cup, Lord. I lift it up. Come and quench this thirsty soul of mine. Bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more." Did I get it all right? Fill my cup, Lord, I lift it up. Come and quench this thirst in my soul. Bread from heaven, feed me till I want no more. Fill my cup, fill it up, and make me whole. I need my cup filled. As I listened to that day, I was like, Lord, my cup was so empty. I tried putting a lot of things in that cup, but it left me empty. Only Jesus Christ will fill the thirsting of our soul. And not just being baptized once, but communing with Him, walking with Him, staying with Him day by day. You know, what about you? Is your cup full? Is it full of the living water of Jesus Christ? Or has it been some time that you went to Jesus and said, "Fill my cup, Lord"? Or like Samuel, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." In my hand, I have a baptism certificate that I will give one of the children afterwards. It's a very important piece of paper. But what is heartbreaking is how often at the end of someone's life, and they have either on the verge of leaving this world or have left, the only testimony they have that they will be in heaven is they say, "Well, I had a piece of paper once. Once upon a time, I was baptized." All I can see is the outer shell. But I want to have a testimony that doesn't depend upon a piece of paper. I want to leave proof of living water flowing out of my life. And let that make a difference. Because I would hate to be the person that gets to heaven and it says, "My only testimony is I have a piece of paper once upon a time." David lived a life that overflowed, and people said he had a heart after God. Did he mess up? Yes, he did. He messed up over and over again. He also followed God. And he sought Him in the quiet times. And he said, "Fill my cup, Lord. I will seek your face in the morning." So what about you? Is your cup full, or is it about to run dry? How is your personal private walk with Jesus? Will He be looking for you in the morning because it's your pattern to seek Him? I pray that you do. Let's pray. Dear Jesus, I thank you for your patience with us. I thank you for your word that inspires us, for your word that shines a light onto our path, a word that speaks to us publicly, but oh, how much more so privately. So Lord, help us to follow you. Help us to go to you personally and have our cup filled with your living presence, with your Spirit, Lord. Oh Lord, may no one doubt or base our salvation simply because we have a piece of paper. May it be in a living display of Christ working in me and through me. And for us to have that, it doesn't come simply by looking to you in times of danger, but by looking to you in the quiet moments of each day. So Lord, here we are, your children.